Expedition Into Darkness is currently running an alpha playtest until July 7th. If you're seeing this video in the first few days before that deadline, jump on Steam, hit the playtest button, and you should be able to jump straight in. If not, might be worth following if this game interests you. Here's the rundown of my thoughts on the game, which has no current release date, but is aiming for Q1 or Q2 2026. So what is this game? Expedition, to put it simply, is PvE Tarkov set in medieval times. You're using swords, bows, and magic instead of guns and grenades. It's a third-person cooperative dungeon crawler with some horror and Lovecraftian mystery elements strewn through its world, although the playtest provided us only a small insight into this. Despite that, I've come away feeling like they have a very clear vision on what they're trying to make, and it's the type of dungeon crawling adventure that I've been waiting for. Its brutal permadeath nature pumps up the intensity to really bring exploring their world to life. You could bring your best armor, your best weapons, you could find the best loot, and have it all torn away from you right as you try to escape, which keeps you on your toes. It's up to you what you risk. Do you go in alone, knife in hand, or bring friends and put on your best chainmail or metal plating to tackle bigger threats? The freedom of choice is yours, which I love in games like this. At its core, this game wants you exploring procedurally generated ruins or dungeons filled with traps, hazards, and nightmarish creatures while uncovering a wider story narrative, collecting loot, mastering different weapons styles, and like an extraction shooter, your goal is to get the goods and get out, to sell them, use them in future runs, or use them to upgrade your various crafting stations, basically your hideout. The playtest, unfortunately, is not procedurally generated, which is fine. Many of the items have placeholders, and clearly all of this is still a work in progress. It's a playtest after all. The available play area is very limited. There are only 3 enemy types, 1 trap I noticed, and limited storytelling as a result. But if this had been procedurally generated, I don't know if you'd be getting this video. I was struggling to put it down until it got stale, which only happened because it was a set map and not procedural. Now, I mentioned this is PvE. It's designed to be a solo or co-op adventure, but on their Steam page in some community updates, they have stated they plan to explore PvP, creating a PvPvE space in the future, which would be optional. I wouldn't hold out for this. Their vision seems to be PvE, but worth noting it may come in the future as they've mentioned. And I think I'd prefer it remain PvE, at least for now. Expedition's combat system works well enough for the PvE style, but I could imagine PvP being a little bit of a mess. Combat in Expedition can be thrown into 3 main categories: melee, with swords, axes, and the like; ranged, with bows or crossbows; and magic. Each one with its own strengths and weaknesses, although I found the bow to be very strong, and I didn't get the chance to try magic myself. Combat is slow and methodical, but intense at the same time. With only 3 enemy types in the playtest, it was hard to fully explore its potential. Your basic zombie-style enemies were easy to take down one at a time, but alerting them to your presence turned the game into the best parts of Left 4 Dead, sending hordes of enemies spewing at you from darkened corners. They were quick to overwhelm, forcing me to rely on using choke points and constant retreats to better positions to stop myself getting overrun. The vampire, goblin-looking thing was quick. Outrunning it wasn't going to really be an option. He could also pin me to the ground for significant damage. I ended up taking him down the first time using a steady sword and shield approach, slowly dodging and blocking while I willed away at its health. That approach wouldn't have worked all that well against the zombies, who could have overwhelmed any shielding efforts. And finally, there was an ogre. Maybe one of the weaker showings to what is clearly supposed to be their strongest monster of the test. I very quickly identified that because it walks so slowly, it was easy to just sit back with a bow landing headshots while dodging the occasional boulder it'd throw my way. I did try melee and it went as expected. I found myself preferring a one-handed melee weapon with a torch for visibility and a bow on the back for bigger threats or to try take out the zombies before they aggroed. But if I played with friends, I would have certainly considered what options we all had. Maybe have someone lead with the torch and fall back behind a shielded friend when shit hits the fan. Weapons allow you different forms of attack as well. You can attack with a slash, stab forward, or perform an overhead swing, allowing you to target specific areas of an enemy. But I didn't notice much difference in where I hit the enemy during the test. I'd be interested to see where they take that system. I noticed many in the forums saying combat felt clunky to them. It feels clunky in the same way Chivalry's combat feels clunky, or a Souls-like might feel clunky to those used to fluid movement. but it absolutely works for the environment in my view. Your mileage on that may vary, and it's a very subjective topic. But the environment in this game is its biggest draw for me from an atmospheric perspective. And a lot of the game's success will land on how well procedural generation is handled. In this playtest, running the same map repeatedly, it got old fast, simply because I knew what was around each corner. I knew where the enemies were, the loot, the threats, and it became repetitive as a result. If this had been procedural though, as they're planning for release, God, I see the idea. My first few runs exploring this dungeon were thrilling. Hearing noises behind doors, slowly pushing forward with my torch into pitch black rooms, not knowing what I would find, looting chests and finding armor, weapons, and items I had no way to immediately value. It was intense. That's the feeling I was chasing. Not knowing if behind the next door was safety or another horde. Like Tarkov, when you find something good and want to get out, you're suddenly paranoid about players around each corner. Expedition captured that same feeling, just within a PvE environment. Walking precariously over wooden beams to get to the other side, mindful of what could be ahead. A procedural version of this will absolutely hold player attention. Where it stumbles is if that procedural generation isn't up to snuff. Don't get me wrong, a certain section of player base will still love it regardless, but if their procedural generation ends up being moving room A to be in room C's location and mixing in one of 3 enemy sets, then players will find it repetitive over time as they work through the various combinations. Like Elden Ring Night Rain's procedural worlds, they're not that different, just a slight variation on something we've seen. If they can develop a system to make that procedural generation keep players on their toes for longer, then the exploration itself will be a huge draw. When it comes to outside of those runs, you're taking on tasks from the game's traders, building your own weapons, mixing and matching armor pieces, and fleshing out your crafting systems over time. The gear you find and make is all broken down into smaller subsections, like Tarkov's weapon system. You can change your weapon's grip, blade, hilt, the lot, and its stats will vary. In a similar vein, armor will only protect certain areas of the body and has certain defensive stats based on what it's made out of. At this point, you can see all this is very placeholder, along with the items you find in runs. To fully realize this system's potential, I'd need to see more and fight a wider variety of enemies. In terms of what you're able to craft, initially your options will be limited, but you can go ahead and upgrade your blacksmith, upgrade your out of match stash size, upgrade your alchemy options, all from the loot you find in dungeons, encouraging you to get back out there and bring back that upgrade for your station. I found that I didn't make much use of this, to be honest. Again, more so because I knew where to reliably find healing items run to run due to the maps being static. In a procedural setting, this would be much more engaging. I'd be more worried about not finding resources, and instead I'd be making them. Ultimately, Expedition Into Darkness is putting a nice spin on the extraction genre that has been blowing up ever since Tarkov's rise. They've broken the mold, going for a primarily co-op PvE experience, pitting you against challenging and brutal dungeons to test your skills, patience, and perception. I really hope they nail that procedural generation. If I had one bit of feedback to give, it is they need to nail that part of the package. Exploration in a game like this is key, and it somewhat addresses the problem of players solving the game. I can kill everything in the playtest now no problem, because I know the layout. Take that away from me, and I'll need to think a little bit harder. I'll need to think more about if I push into that next room for more loot, if I don't know what enemies lie ahead. I'll think more about what I need to bring in, because I need to be ready for any kind of situation. Having that procedural generation will bring this package together, and I can't wait to see what they make out of it. This feels like the type of game you'd be discussing with friends for years after. Remember that time you tried to escape a horde by running across a wooden beam? Or that time an ogre hit you with a boulder so hard it knocked you into the room with a goblin vampire? It's a game that could make memories in gaming circles. And I say that because I have tons of those from Tarkov. Those high intensity moments where you found a quest item or you found a valuable 1 in 100 drop and you're racing to get it out of the dungeon. When your friend suddenly sets off a horde, would you run or leave them behind? It's a solid idea. It's got a solid foundation. I feel like I'm saying that a lot these days. Let's pray that they can execute it and don't bring it out a bit too soon. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you've enjoyed it, throw a like on the video, sub if you want to see more, but you being here, that's what really matters. A reminder, this playtest is running through to July 7th, so if you have time, jump in and try it out for yourself. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Until then, if you want even more gaming content, come check out my streams. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 4 PM Australian Western Standard Time, right here on YouTube and Twitch. Until then, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.